First of all, it's such a joy, and it always is an absolute joy to be here with you all and to see you coming in from all over. And really, John, top marks to you from Sydney, Australia at 5 o'clock in the morning. Wow, that's something. Sometimes I attend the ACAP webinars and they're 5 o'clock in the morning for Japanese time. So I really know it makes an effort. Let's just quickly go through the usual little housekeeping things. If you're not speaking, would you please remain muted? We are recording, as you know. We think we'll probably go about 15 minutes over the top of the hour, but if you feel that you need to go, please feel free, knowing that you will be able to pick up on the recording. You know that you can have either the speaker view or the gallery view by going right up to the top right-hand corner of your screen and clicking on view and choosing whichever one you particularly want. And I think without any further ado, I'm going to jump in, because we're hoping that this is going to be the most lively and productive conversation between yourselves, and that it's going to lead us to define some very interesting steps for next year. Back in September, we started exploring the legacy of Maggie Kuhn and the Great Panthers. And in that discussion, and also in October, we really realized that the issues that she had been confronting 50 years ago were very much the same today. And in fact, there were even more issues. And what was also interesting is that the issues are universal issues, and these are the issues that are challenging older people all around the world. So we continue to be inspired by what Maggie has done. There's no question that change will happen, and it is happening. But the problem is that the pace isn't fast enough. The aging population is growing at such a pace so that it's outpacing, in fact, the policy and the practices that we are experiencing today. So what we have to do as change agents is to accelerate the pace, to put our foot flat down on the pedal, to be part of the conversation and the solution, and to use our agency and to raise our voices, because there are more and more older people in the world today. In fact, in some countries, they're up to 26, 28% of the total population. So it's only fair that we should all have our say, and we'd be able to make our voices heard. Let's just consider this. It took 14 years of activism and advocacy for Maggie and the Grey Panthers to get the United States law on mandatory retirement age abolished in 1986. Imagine if we could start transforming the law in countries around the world where the forced retirement age is still in action and it is discriminating. And yet, on the other hand, we should also be working in countries where there is absolutely no retirement age and absolutely no compensation for older people. And those people have often to just carry on working until they drop, and that's not fair either. Clearly, we need long-term strategy, harnessing the power of many and mobilizing the fresh supply of adults aged 60 plus who enter this phase of life on each and every single day. We continue to be inspired by the legacy of Maggie Kuhn. She just had the knack of finding the one thing in people that would motivate them. She got them to look inside themselves and to see that they had the potential to act. They could see themselves through her eyes as being mediators or mentors or monitors or motivators or mobilizers. And this was her art, to be able to get people to identify with a role and to see that they also could act. So we would like to know tonight which of these roles appeals to you and which one are you willing to embrace and act on now. We really can't afford to push the burden of change to the future. We owe it to the young people coming up to be older people. and any point is in fact a good starting point. These challenges are the ones that we at Pass It On Network have been rallying around for going on to 10 years now. Firstly, advancing self-advocacy. It all starts with you. It starts with me and with the power of one. We all have voices and we all need to raise them. The second one is lifelong learning and earning, enabling, encouraging, and celebrating personal growth and economic security. The third is digital empowerment and equity, boosting social and functional connection. The fourth is aging rights, combating aging inequalities and empowering aging strengths. And finally, to put an end to age-based discrimination in law and public policy, in medicine, in industry, in the media, and in society at large. Here is what we collectively declared at the end of our October meeting, when we were all excited about it. We will leverage the international reach of the Pass It On network to bring down the silos dividing like-minded advocacy groups and mobilize them around the shared vision. We will do things jointly and become a unifying force that leads organizations around the world, working to embolden, empower, and to fully enfranchise older persons. And so today, we want to call on your experience and on your wisdom to define together concrete steps in this direction and to find out from you what and where you would like to play and what kind of role you would like to play. So Osnat, I think you should take over now.
I'll participate. Yeah, we have now we can go in and kind of look at some of the details. So this is an opportunity to start finding out. And if to paraphrase Maggie again, I know she's kind of looming over this entire conversation, but for good reason. Stop agonizing and organize. Okay. I want to refresh our memory because last month we did a poll on a poll. Looking at the 6 issues that rose to the top and looking at which one or two were the most important. So I just want to share one more time that slide. Can everybody see the slide? Can you see it? Is it resounding yes? Yes. We looked at 5, not 6. 5 issues, and discriminatory aging and negative aging stereotype, otherwise known as ageism, was the one that everybody thought was the top issue that needs our attention now. The second one after this was segregation of older adults from the mainstream society. So take a deep breath, take a look at these, and we're going to continue looking at them deeper. I had a conversation with Janine the other day, and she says, you know, ageism falls under it all the other terrible things that we experience here in society. And I personally, I say yes and no, because each and every one of these has a place for its own, even though they're all connected somehow to ageism. So let's look at some of these things right now. So as Moira said before, in Pass It On Network, we rally around these topics of, multitasking is bad. Okay, here it is. Excuse me. Okay, here we are. We rally again around these issues of advancing self-advocacy, digital empowerment, lifelong learning and earning, and aging rights, and putting an end to age discrimination. And all of these, you can say, fall under ageism. But, and they can all be traced to self-directed ageism or institutional one. So if you use chat right now, I'd like to, let's get some baseline here. What forms of ageism that require specific action are most relevant to you right now? And you can use that list to inspire you, or you can come up with something else. But let's just use the chat, and I'm going to put the question in chat too. You'll see that there are actually two questions there. The second question is why? So what forms of ageism that require specific action are most relevant to you now, and why? And then so let's take like a minute or so. There's no music for that. So I'm going to read some of the ones that are there already. There's a question: is ageism discrimination against person on the basis of any age or just older people? Well, everybody in any age is going to be old at one point. So but age is a continuum in my view, but maybe we can have some other views on that. Michelle, you sent it just to me, so maybe you want to put it like sent to all. Elder abuse, because it's happening and is often unreported. Ending aging discrimination in employment, it's rampant, linked to lower financial security, especially among older women and older women of color. And to age-based discrimination in BC, yay. Age-based discrimination, it colors perception of how we see older people. Now it's moving really fast because all of you have a lot to say. It is the root cause of all other major issues. Our generation destroyed the planet for youth. This is ageism. Access to health and attitude of healthcare workers toward older person. Digital ageism, because it is the new ticket to play in game of life. And on and on and on. And so does anybody want to say more? We'll take 3 people briefly to say more about the topic if you want to say it to the people, not only write it. And the rest of you can just also take a visit to the chat and see what everybody's saying.
What's next?
Yes.
For
Beatrice.
me, Beatrice's story from Zimbabwe. I'm thinking in Zimbabwe, all those things which you have raised, all those points which you have raised, they really affect us. And Nesta, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really don't know whether there's the best, there's the top one or the least one, because as far as I'm concerned, they're all challenges with which we really battle with in Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Peter, you have your hand up.
So I've been chatting about ageism and the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Even the goddess of ageism, Ashton Applewhite, will say ageism is discrimination on the basis of age, which could mean youth, could mean infants, and then goes ahead and talks about older people. I think if we don't stop just looking at woe with us as elders and don't focus on the fact that we have destroyed the planet, as I said, not literally, but almost, you started your introduction that way. Things have changed since the Grey Panthers. This is not the same world. This is not the same earth. This is a time where we elders have to stop complaining and whining about ageism, not that it's not an issue, and put it under the umbrella of discrimination against people across the age spectrum, in my view. And if I'm raising my voice and speaking with passion, I am, and I apologize if that's annoying to people.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Yes, Jen.
I'd like to just reinforce what Peter has just said by showing you a sweatshirt that I got from when Maggie Kuhn was still around. And here's my Grey Panthers sweatshirt label here. And what does it say? It says, "You can make a difference. Age and youth in action." At that time, that was the only organization that I knew of that was encouraging young people and old people together to work for what was most meaningful. And that's why I became a Grey Panther. That was many years ago. I think it was 1974 when I first heard Maggie Kuhn at a national conference speaking. And she had with her young people. And I realized she lived at that time in Philadelphia, and she lived in a home where people of all ages lived together. And it was welcome to me because at the time I was living, I had opened my house as a commune and we had 9 people, with 5 adults and 4 children. That was to me, and still is, the way I want to live my life, and why I've just moved actually from Cape Cod to Portland. Now I'm in a intergenerational household. So that's just echoing what Peter said. It's time for us to go backwards, perhaps, because there are so many people in so many parts of the world who are already living together with their grandchildren. And I think that it's time that all of us find not a grandchild necessarily, but just multi-generational interaction to work on what we think is most important. And I certainly agree with climate action as being one of them.
Thank you, Jen. I wanted to just go back to something Moira said before. She said, we cannot afford to push the burden of change to the future. And the other thing that I wanted to add here also is that a lot of actions of change are happening, and they're happening by default or by necessity, because the percentage of older people over 60 is growing by leaps and bounds every day. So the changes will happen intentionally and unintentionally. And as Moira said before, our role is to accelerate the change and not wait until it catches up with demography. And that's the same thing where I think it kind of dovetails at what Peter said, that highlighting the fact that we have a continuum. We have to include all ages in that conversation. Sylvia, you mentioned in the chat here, Moira mentioned the long-term strategy, so maybe you can say something about this, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Oh, can I say something? This is wonderful what is happening right now here. To accelerate a change, not by default, as I totally resonate with that. It would be, for me, it would be asking ourselves, which is the world we wish to live in community, people of all ages. And we have some all around the world, we have examples for that. For example, in traditional Buddhist communities, they live together, families and people of all ages. We have the Hopi poem, which tells us about community building and this river that flows so fast. So, and it is also about realizing that processes take time, different time horizons, but tuning does not take time. It is tuning into what we really want to see in our world. And I think that the Hopi poems invites us to do that, because, for example, it says, vanish the word struggle. So we can change that to something else. With what are we going to replace that? But it gives us hints. Make everything you do sacred. Care for that. And also we have all around at least 5 or more places in the world that are the so-called blue zones. There, the age continue to be active without active and integrated in their communities. So there is much and much more. I'll only bring something like that. And something I think we have really to question is the mainstream assumptions. The problem-solving approach. The problem-solving approach usually creates more problems with its solutions. So, and blinds us from that what we really want to go for. For example, as an economist, I studied economy because I wanted to end poverty. Okay, and you know, millions and billions to that, and what happens? I don't need to tell you the story, or inequity or things like that. If we change our lenses, tuning into what we really want to see in our world, I think that would bring a long-term approach. And something more, if you allow me. Last July, Ethan Bunerat participated in a scientific event. I invited him because of this 7th-generation approach. And there we approached it with for a culture, a human community that addresses, that creates a world for 7 generations. 7 generations to the past and 7 generations to the future. So you would have an economy thought for more than 250 years. So that would be an enriched present and an age-rich society. If we change our approaches, we will find so many, we will recognize and use, put to good use, many resources we already have to create more and be fully life-sustaining. So I don't want to take all the air, so that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. This is interesting. I really appreciate it.
May I speak too?
Yes, briefly, Brian, please.
Yeah, I basically really want to agree with Peter and Jan and Sylvia. Part of what I'm a networker. I wonder how many of us here belong to groups that that people who are here who could take a leadership role in connecting their groups to us, or us to their group, however, whichever way we're going. And the other thing, I am a person who I'm looking for and conscious of innovators, of the people who are doing things. And then I thank them. I encourage them. I try to make other people aware of them. And so I think that's part of who we are. We're sensitive to this. And there are lots of people, Sylvia, who are doing wonderful gifts already. I think we need to be aware of them and help the world be aware that there are other choices, other ways of going. So,
wow, thank you. This was another great addition to what's been just said. I want to just take us to a little brief pause here. This is an opportunity for action. It's an opportunity to create a collective impact. We just heard that from Brian, from Sylvia, from everybody else. And if you think about it, the conversations are important, the big goals are important, and we can backtrack from those big goals and see what actions will actually, what steps will take us there, whether it's 100 years from now or 3 years from now. And if you think about every topic under the sun, every branch of office and office of government, of industry, of institutions, if you think about them, they all must include aging. And I'm not talking now about 60 plus. We'll take the grand continuum of aging from the day you're born to the day you die. They have to include that consideration. So you can think about infrastructure and aging, environment and aging, science and aging, health and aging, I don't know, supply chain and aging, homeland security and aging, banking and aging, education and aging, and retail and aging, so and so. So
I'll throw in the church and aging.
Yeah, we can, if you want to include the divine, why not? I mean, that's part of community. So how do we get this consideration into each and every part of the system? Because everything here belongs to a system. Raising the voice of Maggie Kuhn again, she demonstrated that we need to choose focus and tangible and easy to understand goals, ones that the rest of the public can get behind and embrace and support. For example, as we said before, abolishing the mandatory retirement age. So when you look at the chat, we have there many variations of what aging is like. And if you had, so this is the next question I would like to pose to you. If you had one aging policy or action or change that relates to what you see in the list or what you put in the list, and you'd want to change first, what would be your first priority? Something that is tangible, focused, you can harness the support of everybody around it, and you can actually create some kind of traction. What would it be? And we come here from various places around the world, so please look at your context as opposed to trying to change the world as a whole. We'll get there too, together. And put it in chat, and we'll also maybe create a breakout room around it so we can have a smaller conversation around it. So think about it for a minute, and then I'll create breakout rooms for 10 minutes, and you can continue to discuss it in small groups, and then we'll come back. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
My hand. I'll say one of the things that I'm aware of as a networker sort of is that there were issues of people's concerns and such in our group, and I happen to know that there's other members of this community who specialize in those areas. So the ability to talk about those things and say, oh, you should talk with this person, or you should talk with this person. And then the rest of us could even eavesdrop, because whatever the people's concerns are, they're probably ones that overlap with our own.
Mm.
So I think becoming more aware of the gifts of the people who are here is a helpful thing.
Wow, yeah, that's very powerful, and they probably I'm going to have a request around this in a minute. Oh, what's for you?
Yeah, thank you. In terms of changing policy, I was interested to talk about business leaders and changing the way business leaders think about transitioning older workers out of the workplace. And I was sharing an example at the weekend. I was talking to someone who was at 60 years old, told, well, you're retiring. That's the policy. And he stopped working, on the Friday, and he was not working on the Monday. There's such an opportunity to encourage business leaders to do a gradual transition from maybe 5 days a week to 4 days a week to 3 days a week. And it's such a benefit to the employer, the business, because they don't suddenly lose the expertise. And for the worker, that they can slow down a little bit, do a little less, do some other things, but still be very much part of the workplace. So for me, it's about educating business leaders about how we treat older workers as they go through a transition from full-time working.
Malebo, you're raising your hand.
Thank you. Just from what I didn't catch the name the last speaker indicated, we happen to be the South African and Zimbabwean, just noted the fact that in South Africa, for instance, we do have policies that older persons people can retire either at 60 or 65. But the practices are different. I shared an example where 10 years ago, when unemployment among youth was rising, our old parliamentarians, most of them are 65 plus, were encouraging people in the government to retire at 55. They were not going anywhere as policymakers, and we're encouraging other people to leave. But we partly discussed that with policies that promote and support, because without the funding, whether it's from government or actually government and private sector, funding such programs where we have intergenerational programs where the wisdom of the older people can be matched with the technology savviness of young people. In that way, the younger people would learn from the older persons, and older persons would learn technology and all of that from the younger people. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go Janine, Bruce, and Peter. So start with Janine.
Okay, thank you, Maura. So what we talked about in our group was, we talked about this on our call before, if we were to be able to take on one thing that I think has some universality, it's in the United States, eliminating graduation dates and other age identifiers from job applications, because we know that workplace age discrimination is rampant, interferes with economic security. It's a very concrete thing. The states of New York have done it. The states of Connecticut are doing it. Fingers crossed that Colorado will do it. And then how do we, and it also to me follows the legacy of Maggie Kuhn of, how do we come up with a very concrete kind of thing that we can unify people around? I think beyond if there are countries in which that's an issue, that could also roll out. But we also know that there are a number of issues, and some of you have mentioned that a number of countries in which mandatory retirement ages are still a thing. And so, you know, maybe doing some collective action around that. But both of them would directly address something very specific. It's measurable. There are tools for doing it. Others have done it. And it's something that I think I would be happy to rally other networks that I'm involved with, including the Encore network, around that issue.
Thanks, Janine. Bruce and then Peter.
Yeah, hi. So I like that, Janine. I think that's one very straightforward action that can be taken, and I, you know, think that that probably is one of the ways to go. You know, again, this is what I was saying, and I just more and more believe this. This is the practical poet speaking. That it's about using the cost consequences of ageism. It's about demonstrating through stories how much can be gained, how much financial impact there is positively for people's lives. We know that according to the UN, that a 5% increase in people 55 and over working in Australia would bring about a 48 billion annual increase to the economy of Australia. We know that in the United States, the figure is even greater. So, but the only way that we're going to ever persuade people is through both. This is my thing, is I don't believe language will convince anyone to change anything. They need to see demonstrable stories and demonstrable facts of change. And we can come up with all the language we want. It's never going to change people until they see things in action.
Thanks, Bruce. Peter?
If I could just respond to Bruce, right now the National Academy of Medicine in the United States is launching, having a conference on the longevity dividend. And there's a fair amount of focus there on the financial challenges that older people face. Let me say that I'm a bit concerned about that, because elder folks have got to revolt against our current neoliberal economies, not just figure out how to participate them in them, in my opinion. But I had a lovely chat with Michelle, who's a geriatrician. I'm a geriatric neurologist. We had never met before on Pass It On. And we talked a bit about healthcare. And I'm going to tell you a story. This afternoon, I am going to the health education campus at the Cleveland Clinic, working with medical student activists to, in Cleveland, try to get the lead out of children's brains by getting it out of water and other things. And I've sent them an article about how lead poisoning in kids contributes to dementia in later life. So lead is a very good example, and I apologize for telling the story from my own life today, of where we have to think intergenerationally, we have to think about public health, and we really have to transform the way our geriatricians think about their practices. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Peter. Helen, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to also contribute to Bruce's comment, because I think he's got a point. You know, we keep talking in terms of the economy here. Look at the cost of health care and just the, you know, I mean, that needs to be added into the equation as well. And there are a bunch of other things. If we look at volunteerism as another, you know, economically, we know how huge it is. How many billions of dollars are saved, let's put it that way, because we have volunteers. All of those factors are concrete, and we have got some stats on that. And maybe if we pushed out some of those numbers to illustrate the benefit of respecting older adults and what they have to offer, you know, it can help frame the whole concept around aging productively and for the economy and so on and so forth.
Thanks, Helen. I want to add another thought here. We're not in a static world. So anybody who's old today is going to be older tomorrow, and then anybody who's young today is going to be older tomorrow. So going back to what Sylvia was saying before, yes, long-term thinking is that whatever we do today may not impact us, but impact the generation younger than us and the generation younger yet. And I see that Jan has something to say about that.
Yes, I wanted to comment because our discussion with Sylvia and John May. John May has an organization called 100club.live. Is that right, John? I think, I hope if you could put that in the chat box, I think that would be useful. I think that the point here is that to change expectations from the get-go, if everyone could see the potential, as Sylvia describes, for human possibility, if everyone could understand when they're born that the people around them are talking about 100-year life, we have the opportunity to live 100-year life. Now, climate change, etc., may get in the way. Maybe that, we're destroying ourselves in the process. But that is the hope. And what does that mean? Being responsible for yourself for 100 years. I think that we would live life differently from the get-go if we could understand the potential that is out there for each of us from the point of birth.
Thank you, Jen. Sylvia, one more word, and then I have a little request.
Yes, thank you, Osnat. Only to clarify something. Most of the time when we think long term, it is the far future. No, this approach is different. It's an enriched present. It's the far future is here, and the far past is also here. It is an enriched present. So short and long term go together and are recreated together. Something like that to say it in very shortly.
Yeah, I like that, enriched present. I want to go back to something Brian said earlier. And Brian said there's so many people here I'd like to speak with, to explore more. And here's an invitation for you. You may not know how to connect with all the people here on the screen, but if you think about it, who in this room you'd like to explore actions or thoughts or anything around what we've been speaking today? Who would you like to further the action, to further the thinking, to further the coalition building? Write it in chat. If you don't know how to connect to them, we'll connect you.
May I suggest that we even just go around the block and have people not so much introduce themselves, but say what their special interests or gifts are. So
well, I think I'd like to, if it's okay with you, Brian, I'd like to make use of chat a little bit more, but just because of respect of time. And we could probably build it in differently in the next call, like maybe do little introductions, say, in breakout rooms, quick breakout rooms and things like this. But today we did not factor it into the timing. So today, if you want to connect with somebody else, write your contact name and what is the topic that you'd like to connect about, and maybe who you'd like to connect with. So we can have that and help you if you don't know how to connect with them. In fact, Moira came up with an interesting suggestion before, and I think it's really awesome, is that between now and December, connect with at least one or two people who are here today and speak more about them, about what you can do together. We have people here from Australia, from the United States, from Canada, from Africa, from Europe. We know that all these issues are universal. Who do you want to connect with before next time so we can create something even bigger? I think we have maybe another minute or two to take one more insight or idea that came up for you in the conversation that you'd like to share, that you feel is worth sharing with everybody. And then I'll pass the leader microphone to Moira for kind of a wrap up. Any other thoughts? Doug, did you raise your hand?
Yes. This didn't specifically come up in our conversation, but what I find is that I really think like all politics is local. I mean, I'm not disparaging the big ideas and doing the big public, big policy changes. I think that's important. But I would tell people as, I think Bruce said, words are words, actions really do speak a lot louder. And I think if you make a point of doing good in your community and helping other seniors to also be out in the community doing good things, doing good work, that's how you change people's perspective. Is it on a global scale? Well, given the fact that there's so many people from different countries here, I think it is on a global scale. But I really would encourage people to be out there and say, you don't have to wait for folks. I mean, if you get a few elders together, go to the superintendents of your high school or your public schools and say, look, we want to do, we can help you folks. Everybody right now, at least in the States, is looking for teachers. There's going to be a mass exodus of retiring teachers continuing on and help. So there's a lot of things you can do right now that actually show the worth of seniors by doing good in your neighborhood.
A great way to pass it on to Moira. Unmute.
Right, there we go. I love your idea, Doug. We were discussing this a couple of weeks back, and we were thinking, wouldn't it be a great thing to come up with a list of, say, 101 things that you can do that don't cost any money, but that can have impact? And this, I think, is exactly what you're saying. It doesn't have to be a huge project with, lots of money and find funders and all the rest of it. I think it's just so important that we all understand, with populations of 20 to 26 to up to 30% plus 60, we've got the people.
Mm-hmm.
We really do have the people. We just now have to mobilize them, mobilize them and get them thinking about these things. And there's so many ways that we can do things without, as I say, without having money. So I would absolutely love to just have you send us like whatever you think, so that we could construct this list of 101 things that you can do to do good and foster intergenerational relationships and make an impact in your community without it costing a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think, is thank you, Douglas. That's a really nice way for us to just move on to, because we're now going into our time. The Poseidon Network is poised to leverage our international outreach. We're here to connect, to share, and to showcase your actions and your results wherever they are. We know that the shared challenges can be explored and addressed by using many perspectives and practices. And the Poseidon Network is the point of intersection and connection. And that's what the Osnet phrased it, and I really, really enjoy that. I really want to make also the point that 10 years ago, well, almost 10 years ago, November 2013. Jan was in Paris and we launched the Pass It On network. So we're coming up to our 10th anniversary and we're not going to stop here. We're carrying on. It's a relay race towards a world where life is no longer measured by age. After all, life doesn't have age, does it? Huh? When you're a little kid, you're breathing. And we're all breathing the same life and the same life spark. So that's the message that we have to go for. At our next monthly Pass It On network online global conversation, our 50/50s, that will take place on December the 12th. And we really want to hear now concrete things. We'd love you to be able to tell us what kind of connections you've made between now and then, and with whom, and what ideas you've come up. Help us to build this list, and then we structure the conversation in such a way that we can find out more about each one of you. You know, I'm just dying to know more about John May, who's got up at 5 in the morning to come and listen to us. I think that's just stunning, number one. And number two, I think
he's obviously got a sleep disorder, so.
But also Australia is very far, I think, very advanced in its activism against ageism. John,
Yes.
would you agree? And I've seen some of their, you know, their really good artwork and design around that, which makes it all a visual thing. What would you say, John?
Yeah, look, it doesn't feel like that sometimes. And even from my view, I've probably been an ageist young man in my time. So, no, I think we're reasonable, but there's a long way to go. I really do. I think, you know, it's like if you look at the headlights of a car, you know, and it's going down the highway, they're pointing two down. They need to come up and see what life really, you know, is in front of us. And I don't think culturally we're there. No, we're not doing well.
Oh, you disappoint me, because really all the information that comes out through the sites that I see is very positive. But anyway.
Oh, well, sorry, I was speaking more anecdotally, so, you know, probably too pessimistic, that view.
Okay, so as Osnet said, we'll try and structure the next one so that everybody has a chance to talk. I mean, we haven't even heard a word from Jeff Rubin, who's doing so much in the field of ageism, and we haven't heard anything from Jackie, from Vienna, and several other people who haven't asked to speak up. So we really want to hear from all of you. So between now and the 12th of December, number one, if you want to, please make contact with other people in this Zoom room to discuss and to go further. Number two, please send us a few of your ideas of how we can further this without spending a fortune, right where we are and right now, without waiting or starting or wanting to campaign or doing long-term strategy. What you can actually do today or as of tomorrow. I think that's very important. And then we want to also hear from you as to how we as the Global Pass It On Network can advance your outreach by talking about you, by telling people what you're doing and what your projects are. And then, because it will be the last 50/50 for 2022, we're going to make it a little bit festive. And we invite you to watch your emails to see how that's going to shape up. And it's all coming very soon. I don't know about you, but time just seems to be accelerating at a most dreadful pace. So I think now I would just like to thank all of you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and being with you, as always. Please, there is a feedback form in the chat. It means an awful lot to us if you can just take immediately 4 minutes to fill in the form, because we're all so busy, and if you don't do it now, you won't do it, and that's, I totally understand that. So please just take those 3-4 minutes and send it to us immediately. Last time we had a much better response than usual because people did it straight away. And we will be making this recording available to you on our YouTube channel. And we've also got plans for our YouTube channel to include other people from next year, but more about that in December. And we're going to leave the session open for the next 10 minutes. So if you want to stay on and chat, and please feel very welcome. If you need to leave, we understand that too. Thank you so much once again to one and all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so nice. Yeah. Gee. I see.
Yeah, to those of you who are still here, we're going to send, as usual, a follow-up highlights of the call with some of these links again and others. So you don't feel rushed right now.
Right. But do fill in the questionnaire.
All right.
So John,
Thank you
for really
Thank you, John.
joining us.
Yeah, nice to meet you all. Very pleased to be here.
Likewise.
See you next time.
And John, maybe we should share with you some of the, I also get really good stuff out of Australia. So
Right.
I've been impressed. So
Yeah. Well, look, I look forward to this being the start of much dialogue, I hope. So yeah, I'd like to see that. Please change my mind. all I'm saying is I think there's more to do. There's
of course there's more to do.
greater opportunity, really. Yeah. Right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Brian. Thanks,
You're
Maleba,
welcome.
coming in all the way from South Africa. Bye-bye.
Peter, I want to get acquainted sometime. Oh, bye-bye.
Well, Brian, he comes here very often, so
I know.
coming over
I
and we'll
hear about him. So interesting
Yeah.
person. Thank you all.
Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye, everybody. I was busy completing the questionnaire when you
Oh, bless you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Malebo.
Oh, I better find that questionnaire. What is
Thanks,
in
Brian.
my email?
It's
Look in your chat. There's a link there. Just click on the link. It will take you right there.
great. Thanks so much, Maleba.